Well, our next speaker is Randy Claremont, the new director of Michigan DNR's Fisheries Division. And I'm not sure, do you have slides? You want to do a screen sharing, Randy, or is it more
No,
in?
I do have slides, but just I first want to jump in. You can hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, thank you. I think I'd much rather have a conversation. I also want to thank you and Megan for organizing this. This is kind of completing a series of workshops that I know that have been held around the Great Lakes that Michigan Sea Grant and Extension puts a lot of effort in. And as a partner agency, we are so appreciative of all the work that you do. Also, Matt, what a run. You get a break now, take a deep breath. Um, and so glad to take it over and kind of help both answer the question you ended on, but also field any additional questions. And thanks, Sean, for her excellent presentation on sea lamprey, the continued threats, but also the advancement that we've seen in that program. So, yeah, in short, we have about 25 um, creel clerks across the four Great Lakes that Michigan has jurisdiction on. The numbers vary per lake. Lake Michigan has the most, but it's based on how many ports we have to cover in a given year in our efforts to try to estimate harvest and catch and effort across recreational fisheries. So, if you need more information on the creel survey, please feel free to reach out. Or if you have trouble with how to get samples, whether it be coda wire tag or fish snouts or stomach samples, please reach out to me or any other DNR staff. I see a lot of staffers online, so others can chime in or can help field those questions. I really wanted to just have more of a conversation with the folks that are online. I was having lunch today with a lot of you might know I have an office at the Odin State Fish Hatchery, which is just north of Petoskey. And I was having lunch with the crew there today, and they were telling me that they are approximately a few days from getting all the fish stocked in their facility, and they mainly rear domestic browns and rainbows. But you can see the pride in the staff. The relief that they got the fish out the door. The spring has been really good in the sense that we had a pretty mild winter, a warm up, but then holding temperatures in those cooler ranges to allow us to get to where we can put the fish in waters where the receiving water is close to the hatchery water. And that's going to bode well. And I know I saw Ed Rutherford was on the call today. I saw a few other folks that have sent videos or posted videos of plants and their fish stockings in their area, and fish look good. Appreciate your help and support, and showing up at some of those sites, scaring avian predators away if birds were to show up, and other things you do. So, but thinking about that in general kind of led me to the idea that, before I was chief of fisheries division, I had the unique opportunity to manage Lake Huron as Lake Huron basin coordinator. And I kind of had the dream job, to be honest with you. I mean, Lake Huron, very engaged stakeholders, a lot of passion in the fishery. You can see in the diet samples, you can see it, similar to Lake Michigan, which I was a research biologist on for years. And a lot of people ask me, well, why change? Why move to the position I'm in today? And it really gets to this overall idea that even though we're going to be sending out a press release in a couple of days on how many inland surveys we did last year, which was a fantastic number, approximately 200 surveys on our inland lakes and streams. If you look at the inland lakes in Michigan right now, based on the number of crews and technicians across the state, every inland lake in Michigan, which by the way, we have 10,899 inland lakes, has a probability of being sampled once every 90 years. An inland lake surveyed once every 90 years. So what I saw in Lake Huron is we couldn't keep up with the passion of the stakeholders. Yes, we do. Our staff are amazing and they do amazing work. And we see the impact of that in the landscape. But really, one of the challenges we're having in the division is just basic struggles with our capacity and our ability to meet the needs and our responsibilities as resource managers under the public trust doctrine. So that's really why I moved from, my dream job as a Great Lakes manager and basin manager in Huron to really trying to help get fisheries division to where it needs to be by convincing both stakeholders, fishery stakeholders, and general public that our fisheries is worth the investment. We need to invest in our fisheries. We really do. If you don't know how bad the situation is, I can just allude a little bit to it, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges we're facing and how we can turn those into opportunities. But if you were to buy a trout stamp and a regular fishing license in 1997, so basically an all species license at that time, you would pay the same you're paying today in 2024 as you were in 1997, $26. Our whole funding structure, our 6 state fish hatcheries, our management of 4 of the 5 Great Lakes, 3,300 miles of Great Lakes shoreline, 55,000 plus miles of streams, including a huge diversity of fisheries, both cold water, warm water. If you look at all of those resources and the fact that our funding is based entirely off licensed dollars that have stayed at a price point the same since 1997, you can just imagine what that's done to our capacity. If you look at some of the things that are happening across the division, the implementation of the 2023 Great Lakes Tribal Fishing Decree, having to implement a new program, which is to regulate and to license inland fishing guides, similar to what we've been doing for Great Lakes charter captains for years, and our stocking and our other programs. There's the to-do list kind of seems to never end, and just keeps growing, and yet we're at reduced capacity. So I'm not going to belabor this conversation with a bunch of slides that hopefully most people on the call have seen today. Or not today, but have seen before today. We've had coffee and conversations. We've had other meetings across ports, across Michigan, where you might have heard of investing in Michigan's fisheries as a major endeavor that we hope to both pursue and restructure the funding this year. What that looks like exactly, we don't know. Instead, what we've done is we've reached out to our key stakeholder reps and said, we want everyone's input. We want to know what people think the fisheries in Michigan should be managed for, what opportunities could be enhanced, what can be done to make our fisheries even better than what it is today. I know there's been a lot of presentations across the lakes about pretty big things that our staff have been able to tackle with limited resources, including things like Lake Superior now has a new fisheries management plan that's been released and published. In Lake Huron and Saginaw Bay, we have a new yellow perch walleye management plan that is out for public comment. We're continuing to try to enhance our sturgeon rehabilitation and stocking program. We're seeing huge improvements in terms of capital outlay with success in trying to get investment in our facilities, which we've had a long list of neglected maintenance projects that have been sitting there for decades that are kind of coming to roost, and we're starting to try to tackle those. So we're making huge steps in the face of limited resources. So, I open it up for discussion. I hope there's some questions for me about specifics and what this would mean, or other things you've heard in Michigan in terms of where the fishery is going. What threats do you hear in the landscape? To put in context, going back to Sean's initial presentation, we're managing and mitigating for sea lamprey after they were invaded and colonized the Great Lakes. And that is vital to sustaining our fisheries, vital. At the same time, we're still facing invasive carps at the front door of the Great Lakes, and it's still a threat. And Michigan is still struggling to get support and get the management agencies engaged. We need a louder voice in these issues. We really do. And Michigan should really reinvest in its fisheries because, simply put, they're worth it. I'm not monitoring the chat or the questions, so I don't know if there's any out there for me. But maybe if there are some, Brandon, Dan, others, you can jump in.
Nope, there is nothing in the chat or the question or answer block yet, but I'd invite folks to please share any questions or comments in the chat or question and answer feature, and we'll open up the gallery so we can all talk amongst ourselves.
Yeah, that would be great, Brandon. And I know that there's been more specific workshops at, individual areas across Lake Michigan, Lake Huron in particular. Any themes or questions come out of those that would be worth sharing? Might be also valuable. I'm sure there's probably questions on maybe some of the habitat projects that people have seen, the Saginaw Bay Reefs, for example, some of the continued efforts to monitor invasive species or other things that might have been brought up in terms of the Great Lakes fisheries, food webs, anything, please feel free to raise those as well.
I'll chime in with some of the thoughts from our Ludington workshop, where a couple of anglers expressed a lot of support for bringing back the salmon stamp, or the idea of paying more for a license for salmon and trout, but specifically with that money earmarked for salmon and trout propagation or habitat that would specifically benefit those fish. Because I know, a big part of this, right, is some kind of licensing restructuring package. So there was a lot of interest in that at the other workshops as well. And if you have any more ideas or thoughts that you've heard.
Yeah, I think it's great. I'll chime in to say, in general, we have heard phenomenal suggestions, both including a Great Lakes salmon and trout stamp, an inland trout stamp, a family fishing license, a muskie stamp, a walleye stamp, a habitat endorsement, other ideas for senior licenses, kids fishing licenses, changing the youth age from 17 to 16, which the national average of all 50 states is 15.5, I think, for a youth license, or when you're required to buy a license. So we have a long list of these. What's coming out of these suggestions, phenomenal suggestions, is the idea that most people don't know this, but a fishing license is in statute. So it is basically in law. And when it was changed in 2014 to kind of get rid of all of the stamps and make it just one all species license, that fixed both the structure and the fee until a new law is passed. That's kind of why we're in the idea that a fishing license hasn't changed since 2014. One of the things we would like to get out of is that model whereby there's no cost of living, no inflationary adjustments, and there's no ability to address new opportunities, because we don't know what the fishery is going to look like 20 years from now, or even, potentially 10 years from now. And if there are ideas of ways to improve opportunities and also link that with management, then we should have some ability to do that. And I'll give you a good example. We had a constituent base come to us and say, underwater spearfishing is a very niche fishery, and we would like to pursue it. And after they spoke with a lot of advisory and stakeholder groups across the state, there was support for it. 2 years ago, we put underwater spearfishing license on the table and provided that opportunity. But under statute, we were not able to charge anything for that license. It's a free license. we want to see in this license package as it moves forward, we have the ability to entertain things like a Great Lakes salmon and trout license or other stamps or endorsements or optional licenses. So that we can vet those more carefully with our stakeholders to know what is what is the license exactly going to provide as far as an opportunity, and how will those funds be used to actually enhance and manage that opportunity. We can't get that done in a month or two, right? And so that's what we're shooting for. Unless there's very, very broad support for something, which right now, even for the Great Lakes salmon and trout stamp idea, I wouldn't say there's unanimous support for it, right? So we want to work through that with all stakeholders and anglers, and see that kind of as a second phase in this approach. Good question.
I see
Thanks,
Randy and Terrian has a hand up.
Yes.
Hey, Randy.
Hey, Randy, how you doing?
Good. Good to see you.
It's great, that you point out the contrast, with the cost of a license now. The equivalency of a 1997, looking at 2024. And, it's amazing what we've done with the limited resources that we have, the personnel, the passion of the people that work within the department. There's no way we would be where we're at right now without their dedication and their passion for what they do. There's less of them, and we have more work to do. You make a very good point. All these surveys that lack, there's things that we need to know, and yet we're striving. We're together. We're all working together to try to make this for the fishery. To make the fishery better. But in contrast, there's been a deficiency for so long, and it's coming to a head where it has to be addressed. And where's the threshold of what the angling public can withstand as far as a license increase, I think is another part of this. We don't want to lose our support, right? Are we looking at a 10 or 15 or $20 per year increase? What is it? And maybe the answer is an incremental, in an incremental fashion, right? $10 for a couple of years, another 5 or 10, and incrementally try to make this less painful as possible. But I think communicating to everybody, this is the hardest thing, is to communicate to everybody everything that goes on within this department, and so much effort. And yet you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Every time you want to do a survey, you got to grab people from over in the Northern Lake management units or to help cover the South. And you're robbing Peter. You got supervisors out in the field trying to help with this type of work. And it's taken them away from what they do. And on top of that, it seems like all managers and supervisors are wearing more than one hat. And this is stressing your people that work under you. And we're really pounding on their passion. Something's got to give, and we have to move forward with this. It just has to happen. We've done nothing. Every time someone retires, we don't fill their spot. And so, here we go. Okay, well, we'll have this person do this job and this job. And eventually, yourself, you can't do a good job once you spread yourself too thin. So something's lost every time that happens.
Yep.
We've come to the point where we have to move forward with this, and we got to figure out a way to get the angling public on board with it, but we have to get them to understand the stress that that the department's under trying to move these fisheries forward.
Yep.
That's the biggest challenge for you.
Very, very well said, Randy. And I agree with all of those comments. And, again, part of mentioning it as the main point of what I want to share today from the division, or a highlight from fisheries in Michigan, is like, you have to be aware of it, right? We all have to be aware of the problem. And there are a lot of creative ways that we can approach it, but The one thing we can't do is just kick the can down the road.
Yeah.
We will be, looking at, I use the example with fish food, just feeding the fish that we have in our hatcheries today. We had contracts with certain food types or food producers. And those fees, those costs were relatively flat to about 5 years ago. And in the last 5 years, they've jumped up 150%. And we're still rearing the same number of fish, right? We're still trying to maintain all of the targets. But like you said, it's something's going to give. You can't, you can't automate it 100%. You got to have people in the facilities and you got to pay for the fish food. And sooner or later, and we can't feed them every other day, right? I'm not going to do that.
Right. Well,
That
it's
just
simple
doesn't make
math,
sense.
right?
Yep.
Anybody that's managing their own finances can understand those dynamics, right?
Right.
Something's got to give, So I think that's the challenge, is getting people to understand this problem. And, so much is happening with less people. You got less people than you had years ago.
Yep.
And so much is happening, and they're doing such a great job. And that is the one thing that I admire with everybody within the department, is the passion at which they do their job. And they just keep doing more. It's less people doing just as much work, if not more.
Yep.
You don't find that very many places anymore.
Yep.
And it's time that we get the right personnel. Let's get some personnel to do the things that we need to do. And let's move these fisheries forward. This is the problem we have with moving things forward right now.
Yeah, and it's not just personnel; it's programs and operations. And I'll give you a good example. We have a grant program. So the last time licenses were set in 2014, the director at the time made a commitment to try to fund habitat projects, because if you change or address a habitat limitation on the scale, and you produce basically a fish hatchery in the wild, it'll be more sustainable and produce more fish longer term than any one of our facilities ever could, right? So if you can invest in a habitat, it's the biggest bang for your buck.
Right.
Our dam management grant program, which everyone is aware, that the difficulty of our aging infrastructure and dams, the impacts that those have on connectivity in the streams. And I'm not talking about lowermost barriers that will let sea lamprey in. I'm talking about barriers in streams that back up sediment, back up contaminants, that are legacy problems in streams. We fund $350,000 a year to address issues on dams. Now let this sink in for a second. The Midland dams, when they blew out, one of those dams to rebuild is $300 million. And we're funding $350,000 per year to address anybody who wants to apply for funds to try to remove or repair or address an issue with the dam in Michigan. 350,000 is it's not even, we're not even addressing the problem, right? We're just
Right.
scratching at the surface.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just amazing what's being done with what little we have.
Yeah.
Within the department. I'm amazed, but it's time. We really have to move this forward. And
Yep.
the discussions have to start. We got to do something.
I think that brings up another point too. Perfect example of dams being something that affects everyone, especially even if they don't think about it. Once one blows out, and it costs everybody. So what about other models? We've been on this user pay model where anglers have been funding everything for so long. What about more dedicated general funds from the state, or approaches that other states have used to get a broader funding base?
Great question, Dan. So if I look at this, like I kind of alluded to, like phases, the first phase is we really have to just address the inflationary pressures with the division and rescale the licenses modestly, keep anglers engaged, don't have too much of a change, but be able to address just our current needs. That's phase one. Keep the same structure, approach it probably that way. Phase two is kind of looking at additional opportunities, additional endorsements. And I would include in there proposals to allow the state to fund programs that shouldn't be funded off a fishing license, management of the commercial fishery, permit reviews that we provide to Eagle, things that the division does that are very important, critically important, but they are not related to a sport fishing or recreational fishing license. The third phase is really what you pointed out, which is addressing the overall model of conservation, where it's user pay or it's only the license holder that's paying for all of the conservation, clean water, access, fishing access, non-game species management, lake sturgeon rehabilitation. I mean, just go on the list, right? Go down the list. For the first time in my career, I've seen traction on I'm seeing the traction in all three of those phases. As Randy mentioned, the first phase, we've seen over 80% support from our stakeholders as we've had the conversation. On the third phase, the overall North American model, I've seen legislators in Michigan engage in changing the model for funding conservation. I've seen key stakeholders, influential stakeholders want to know, how can we get this conversation started? Does it have to be a ballot proposal? Does it have to be a new statute? And I will tell you, every state has struggled with this, and other states, Minnesota, Missouri, that they've been able to change the model that fits them, and it's having huge benefits. So we need to do this. Michigan's, it's time. And I don't know what that'll look like, Dan. I really don't. But I think there's a lot of suggestions on what it could look like. But I think one of the things we want to make sure, and something as big as changing the overall model conservation, is, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We still want to make sure that our fisheries and the conservation of fisheries remains a tenet, a major principle, right? But with that, we know that people will engage in the overall interest in the health of the Great Lakes, the health of clean water, clean lakes and rivers in Michigan, and how can we get them to support that in a new model. So stay tuned. And I would say, if you hear stuff, feel free to get engaged.
Absolutely. I see Frank's video popped on. Frank, did you have a question or comment?
Very, very briefly, I've been on the Lake Huron Advisory since 1989, and it's shocking to see how the fishery division has just declined. Some people say, oh, you got to go in and clean up the inefficiency within the department. Yeah, there is an efficiency when you have managers doing secretarial work, when you eliminate almost all the inland research stations, on and on and on. And I really support the direction that Randy's going.
Yeah, and I'll say too, Randy Tyrion kind of alluded to this. It really engaged stakeholders, and not only do they support it, but they like the partnership. We don't, we have the benefit of the engaged partners and, both fishery stakeholders and agencies, state, federal, tribal, as well as Sea Grant, helping us do the work that's needed, right? But I almost want to say that with an apology, that we've really had to rely on you all, almost to the point where, I probably should put some of you on our employment roll because you're doing the work for us in a lot of ways. I don't want to see that go away. I want to see us supported. I really do. I'll use a good example. Youth fishing. I mean, that's a future of fishing in Michigan, right? We got to engage our youth, our anglers at that level. And some people said, well, under a different funding structure, what was that? What we know that's a priority of yours. What would you do on day one to change that? And I think what they expect me to say is, I'm going to fund a huge program, DNR Fish Division led, to get youth out fishing. And the answer is no, I wouldn't. That wouldn't be my first step. I would look to all of the entities that are out there that are doing the work across, 4-H, Fixing to Fish in Michigan or in Detroit. All of these programs that have supported youth fishing across Michigan, and we can't help them. We can't do it. And I would say we're going to, number one, hold them up, give them support, give them resources so that they can be more successful at what they're already doing. Project Fish. I don't have to reinvent the wheel here. I just need to support what's already in the landscape so that we move the needle and not from first gear to second gear. We move it from first gear to turbo boost, right? And that's what I think Michigan has. If there's a silver lining to what we've been through, that's it right there. But if we can't support them, what's the probability those programs are going to maintain in the future? With no agency support in a state like Michigan. Well, I see we're at our time. I apologize if I've been a little preachy, but this is something that I've been committed to is my leadership role with Michigan DNR Fisheries Division. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share that with you today.
Absolutely. And it's a critical discussion. I think everyone's well aware of the challenges faced. So no problem with little preachiness. It's got to get out there. I see one more comment.
Hi, Shika. Thanks again for all the work that you do with invasive species and the SISMAs, and glad that the sea lamprey and goby talks were good information for you. Reach out if you need to.
And
Whatever.
Randy, I just want to express appreciation to you and the DNR. I know within our Sea Grant team, we are definitely in the motto of do more through partnership.
Yeah.
And just
Thanks,
thank you for that.
and good to see you.
Hello to Jay and Jeff. I just saw you pop on. Did you have any additional comments or thoughts here?
No, just
Just
showing my
maybe.
face before we
right.
say goodbye. Appreciate the Sea Grant and helping, increase the literacy of these issues with our stakeholders.
Well, thanks a lot. I think with that, we'll close out tonight.
Thanks again, everyone. Have a great night.